Welcome to the Africa Echoes, the channel with the stories of Africa. The story of Egypt continues. The desert wind carried whispers through the golden sands. It spoke of kings who dreamed of forever, and builders who dared to reach the heavens. This was Egypt's awakening, an era of genius, ambition, and faith. The age when men became gods, and gods became architecture. But before there were pyramids, there were tombs, small, simple, made of mud brick. And before the word Pharaoh echoed through the Nile Valley, there was just a king who wanted to live forever. It began with a question, one that haunted every ruler. How do you defy death? Egyptians already believed in the afterlife, a vast, beautiful version of life on earth, where the Nile flowed endlessly and the harvest never failed. But to reach it, one had to be remembered, one's body preserved, one's name spoken, one's spirit honored. For common people, this meant a small tomb, perhaps a few offerings. But for kings, divine rulers chosen by the gods, memory itself had to be immortal. They needed a gateway to eternity. That's when stone replaced mud. And Egypt's skyline began to rise. Around 2700 BCE, in the city of Saqqara, a king named Djoser of the Third Dynasty ruled. He was wise, proud, and deeply spiritual. But the man who changed everything wasn't Djoser himself, it was his architect, Imhotep. Imhotep wasn't just a builder. He was a visionary, a thinker who looked at the sky and saw blueprints. He dared to imagine something no one had ever seen, a tomb that reached upward, tier by tier, toward the heavens. He built the Step Pyramid, Egypt's first monument in stone. 6 giant steps stacked upon one another, rising more than 200 feet high. It wasn't just a grave. It was a declaration. A message carved in limestone, we will not vanish. Imhotep's design changed history. He turned architecture into theology, stone into faith. And from that point on, every Egyptian ruler would try to outdo the last, chasing eternity one block at a time. A century later came the Fourth Dynasty, an age of power, precision, and colossal ambition. This was the time of Sneferu, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, the kings who carved Egypt's immortality into the horizon of Giza. Sneferu was the pioneer. He experimented with pyramids, the bent pyramid, which curves awkwardly midway, and the red pyramid, the first smooth-sided pyramid ever completed. He was learning, testing, perfecting the art of eternity. And then came his son, Khufu. Khufu's dream was greater than all who came before him. He wanted a structure that would touch the sky itself. So he gathered thousands of workers, not slaves, as some myths say, but farmers, craftsmen, engineers, all united in royal service. They quarried massive limestone blocks, each weighing as much as an elephant, and dragged them across the desert. Under the blazing sun, with simple tools and boundless will, they built the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. When it was completed, it stood nearly 500 feet tall, the tallest structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. Its sides aligned perfectly with the stars, its base measured with astonishing precision. It was not only a tomb, it was a statement. Egypt had mastered the impossible. To this day, no one fully understands how it was done. But perhaps that's the point. The pyramids were never meant to be understood. The why were meant to be felt. Khufu's son, Khafre, built his own pyramid beside his father's, slightly smaller but placed higher on the plateau, giving the illusion of equality. And at its feet, he placed a guardian, the Great Sphinx. Carved from a single block of limestone, the Sphinx stared east, facing the rising sun. Half man, half lion, it symbolized strength and wisdom, human will fused with divine power. The Sphinx was the watcher of eternity, its silent gaze following the dawn each day for thousands of years. Even now, it watches, weathered but unbroken. For the workers, these projects were not punishment, they were purpose. They believed they were serving gods. They lived in organized labor villages near Giza, fed, housed, and buried with care. Their graffiti still remains on the stones, jokes, names, prayers, voices from across 5,000 years. They worked not for kings alone, but for the idea of forever. In every block they laid, they wrote a message to time itself. We were here. By the end of the Pyramid Age, Egypt was at its height, a land of wealth, art, and divine order. The pharaoh was no longer just a ruler. He was the axis between heaven and earth. Every festival, every law, every temple revolved around his power. But this perfection came at a price. The pyramids were costly, in labor, in stone, in faith. And as time passed, cracks began to show. The old system strained under its own weight. Priests grew powerful. Regional governors sought more control. And while the pyramids stood unshaken, the kingdom that built them began to tremble. The age of pyramids was ending. Not in ruin, but in transformation. One era was closing, but Egypt's story was far from over. The kings of stone would give way to kings of gold, rulers who turned from building tombs to expanding empires. The desert would echo again, not with the sound of chisels, but with the march of soldiers and the whispers of gods reborn. From the shadows of the pyramids, a new age was rising. The age of pharaohs and gods. See you in the next story.